Dean Taylor Sutton. He's Bishop of the Episcopal Diocese of Maryland, a position held since 2008. Previously served as Canon Pastor of the Washington National Cathedral and Director of the Cathedral Center for Prayer and Pilgrimage. Bishop Sutton has been a leader of retreats and conferences on nonviolence, reconciliation, and the environment, and has taught at New Brunswick Theological Seminary and Vanderbilt University Divinity School. He is a graduate of Hope College, earned his Master of Divinity degree at Western Theological Seminary, completed his Anglican studies at the University of the South School of Theology. Reverend Sutton, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am here today as a bishop of the Episcopal Church, representing for many a perspective of the faith community in favor of the proposed legislation on reparations. I might say right at the outset, the debate we are having here this morning and the witness of my colleagues here points to the need to establish a commission. This debate needs to happen, and we need to entertain proposals for how we redress the evils of our past. If we don't address those problems in an open and fair way, then we are continuing to be lost as a nation. By the way, in terms of politics, some of my friends are for Democrats, and some of my friends are for Republicans. And as a religious leader, I am for my friends. I want to say that last month, the Episcopal Diocese of Maryland that I lead, 110 congregations across most of the state of Maryland, voted unanimously for the affirmation of reparations of our diocese, knowing that so many of the resources of our diocese was gained from uncompensated labor of enslaved persons. 100%, not a single negative vote from a diocese that is over 90% white, encompassing people from Western Maryland who have their own history of injustices, coal miners and others, Southern Maryland, suburbs, and city people. How and why did that happen? If it could happen in that diocese, I'm convinced it can happen in America. It happened because when the issue of reparations are fairly and fully explained, Americans want to do the right thing. That issue of reparations is mired in emotion. It's often mischaracterized and certainly largely misunderstood. It wells up an emotional response in people to the word, but when you break it down on what it's actually to do, we find that many of those emotions dissipate. Why is there a need for it? Let me tell you the story of a friend of mine. She and her husband, she was a pastor of a congregation. And a long time ago, she told this story of when their child was young. There was a young girl, a young teenager in the congregation who knew they had a need for babysitting, and she said, "I'll sit for your son tonight." And then she volunteered again. And then my friend and her husband started calling on her more and more. "Would you do this? Would you do this?" Never was the issue of money brought up. They knew she volunteered at first, but she, the teenager, wanted to do this for that more powerful person in that church. That went on for years. After a while, my friend and her husband thought, this was unfair. This actually was an injustice toward her. They wrote her a letter, now in college, and they said, "We believe, we have come to know that this was an injustice. We are sorry. We want to make amends." The young woman wrote back, "Thank you." And then they worked out a way that she could be compensated for her years of work. Their relationship was reconciled. They could look each other in the eye in a way that they could not before because that wall of injustice of that past got in the way of their current relationship. That's what reparations is, and that's what our nation has failed to do for the last 120 years. Reparations, quite simply, means to repair that which has been broken. It is not just about monetary compensation. An act of reparation is an attempt to make whole again, to restore, to offer atonement, to make amends, to reconcile for a wrong or an injury. It is not the transfer of money from white people to black people. It is what this generation, our generation, will do to repair the broken pieces of the racial mess that we have all inherited. As an African American who is a descendant of slaves who were never compensated, I can honestly say to all white people, we've forgiven you. We forgave this country a long time ago, and we continue to forgive every day, but we are not reconciled. To reconcile means to put back together again that which has been broken. After the hard-fought abolition of slavery, there was a fateful denial in our nation of reparations for freed African-American people, even though in many instances, white plantation owners received reparations in the form of compensation for the losses they incurred from the Civil War and the end of slavery. This nation is not, we know about reparations, it's just that it's never been done for those who've deserved it the most. Finally, I'm a Christian. That means I hold to the Holy Scriptures of the Old and New Testaments as my guidepost and to the teachings of Jesus. The Bible mandates that leaders are to be held accountable for the fair and equal treatment of every inhabitant in the land. All of us have been taught to love everyone, regardless of their race and human condition. However, we must come to acknowledge that there can be no love without justice, and there can be no justice without some form of repairing an injustice. I hear from many of my white friends, white brothers and sisters, this question: what do black people want? Haven't we done enough? What do they want? I want to turn the question around. What do you want? What kind of America do you want to live in? If you are happy with the state of race relations now, don't do anything on this issue. But if you want a reconciled nation, let's get this commission and let's entertain those proposals.
Thank you very much, Reverend. Before I recognize our next witness, I want to recognize a member of Congress who's here.